Good evening, folks, and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk right here on KZGN-TV, your only local TV station. I am Al Huey, along with my partner, Robert Eierman, and again, our great, fantastic guest for tonight, Councilman Eddie Thomas. Thanks for having
Thank you for being here.
being with us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Last week, we talked to you a little bit about the council and the pros and the cons and your first 7 months. I wanted to talk a little bit this time about the announcement that was given to the council at the end of the council meeting. I think it was 2 council meetings back,
Yes.
where city manager Mr. Spear caught all of you with deer in the headlights expressions. That the city was some $529,000 short.
592
Was it 592?
I don't know, something.
Yes, it was.
592. 592, excuse me. Short in their budget. But he didn't have a lot more to say other than that. Some of the contributing factors, according to Mr. Spear, was that they forgot to withhold the $250,000 RDA payment for the county. $342,000 was explained in transfer errors, and $150,000 for PERS payments, and along with the $150,000 for the new computer system. But it has grown from the 590 to it's now 742,000. I think the last figure I saw, and then I spoke with you recently and some other council members that it actually probably a little bit higher than that even.
It's a possibility.
And so you had to make budget cuts. For you, it's the first time.
Yes.
For Robert and I and Lori Acton and Jim Sanders, they've been to this rodeo before where they end up having to make cuts in order to get to a balanced budget, which, by the way, would be a good thing for our new president to consider instead of this 19 trillion or 20 trillion or whatever. Anyway, that's a different subject.
Oh, you're talking about Donald Trump again. Is that our new
No,
president?
no. I said our next president.
That's what I said.
Donald Trump.
You're talking about Donald Trump again.
Really?
Oh, here we go.
Really?
So, now, it was also said that when, Raquel McQuiston, or Rachel McQuiston, transferred out right after the council passed the budget. I mean, that night, I think, was her last night. That was her last duty. And she transferred off to a new job. And when she left, it was reported that she told the person that was going to be taking over, Mr. Stolley, that you might want to look at the numbers, which you could read into that maybe she had a sense that her numbers weren't solid numbers. And sure enough, he came back, and that's where we went, and the number just continued to grow. So some of the reasons, excuses were given by Mr. Spear, explaining how this deficit occurred. One of those also is the antiquated budget software system that the city has, with sometime in the 80s, and they're still using it, which has been on the budget, by the way, for some years now, but gets
Always pushed off.
pushing the can down the road. But I don't know that I would totally blame that software. Somebody should be checking those numbers. And also, I was reading that you might recall this. It was during the budget that you just went through. It was announced that the city was going to be some $86,000 short for a balanced budget, and then 2 weeks later, Ms. McQuiston came back and goes, "Oh no, we're $5,000 in the black."
I recall that.
And so the question comes, particularly for former council members on this council, should have asked the question, wait a minute, how can we go from 86,000 in the red to 5,000 in the black in 2 weeks? You would want to be asking more questions, you know?
Yeah, I take some of that responsibility too, because even though I'm new and I haven't had to experience these cuts and that kind of pressure, and I think we all have to take responsibility for it. We should have dug into it. We should have asked those questions. We shouldn't have just have taken things at face value. I think that experience is causing. I know, for example, our mayor. She's asking for numbers now. We're
Yeah.
asking for numbers. We're challenging on different areas because, I mean, none of us like being put in that position or putting the city in that position. So now we're checking things where we probably should have dug in a little harder.
I know some years ago we were looking at, it was during the budget time, and it's happened, I think, every time since. I don't know, maybe you can tell me if it's different this last budget cycle, but particular for the Parks and Rec, they would show the bills that they have. Excuse me. But they never showed the revenues, what was coming into the parks. And that was always a question. So I heard the mayor last council meeting talk about that. We want to know what the bills are, what's going out,
Right.
and we also know what's coming in. And anybody that does a budget, even a regular household budget, you need to know that.
Correct.
I mean, that's the purpose of a budget, you know.
Right.
What are my bills, and can I afford them? If I can't, then I can't afford these, you know, this lifestyle I need to change.
Well, that's what's so unique about this for me, because I got in this budget thing this year, and it was kind of fun because it was new. You know, I'm used to what we do
You
in
know,
our church.
we're up against
Oh.
a break here,
Okay.
unfortunately. I think
Okay.
he said 10 seconds. So we're going to have to go away to break, so please hold that thought. Don't be like Al and I and forget.
forget.
But,
Well, I'm close to your age too, so don't
but we'll be right back with another segment of Ridgecrest Talk here on KZGN-TV.
Okay. So you got it.
And welcome back to another segment of Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with Al Huey, and our special guest is Councilman Eddie Thomas.
And we were talking about the budget surprise, where the council learned that we're short a couple of dollars. Now to the tune, last we heard, almost 750,000 roughly. But as you said, it could be higher. There's
It
some
could be higher.
indicators that it could be higher than that.
Higher. I think once our current financial director continues to wrap his head around it, we may find that there's more or less, but I'm hoping that it's less.
And then I also heard that we have a couple departments that are getting overtime. Police department to the tune of $400,000. And IT department, or persons,
Yes, I think that's what they're calling the IT department.
300,000. Well, that right there is almost covers the deficit of $750,000. Do you find that a little disturbing that we got that kind of overtime?
I'm not sure if it's that those numbers are totally accurate, but I know that when Ms. McQuiston gave us our budget before she left, there were numbers that she had given us, and I don't know if those numbers are still transparent or accurate, but they were. The police department had their number, and our IT people have their number as well. But we have asked, or I have asked personally, from the council position, where do we
verify those
stand
numbers,
at
yeah.
in reference to overtime? And I know the police department, some of their overtime is generated through grants that they have written and got back approved. So to find those numbers, I think we're working on trying to find them.
Now, we've all worked for the government. You currently still work for the government,
Yay.
soon to be adios.
Yay!
But when I worked for the government, I worked for the Federal Aviation Administration, and the kind of work that we were doing, you're talking about people's lives,
Yes.
okay? It's not just a government job. The work that I was doing on air traffic communications, radar, backup systems, backup power, they have to be there.
Mhm.
And we had gone through, in my career, numerous years where you get towards the end of the fiscal year and, uh-oh, we don't have any more money. You got to tighten the belt. No overtime unless it's life and death. We couldn't even, if we needed some parts, you had to go to your supervisor. He'd have to approve it, and I think he even had to go to his supervisor and say, look, this is the situation. We need to get this, because if we don't, this equipment's going to fail. We're going to put people's lives in danger, that type of thing. Is it time for the city and some of the department heads and the city manager to start implementing a little bit tighter control on the budget?
I think our city manager and our mayor are both going to begin doing that, because again, it didn't just, this financial disaster, if you allow me to use that term, it just doesn't fall on one, it falls on all of us. And I think the mayor and the city manager are taking it extremely personal, and they're going to find ways that we can tighten up, make better announcements, make better decisions on what we're going to do. So I know that our mayor and city manager are really upset about the financial position that we're in right now. So we're working on it. That's why we're looking at everything possible to find out the pluses and the minuses, what's in there, what's going out, because those things, they add up and they amount to where we're at now.
And I know it's not a lot of money, but I have to bring it up. I think just about at least everybody in a management position for the city has one of those little things that you can talk on, a cell phone, in addition to their office phone, and in addition to their computer. And I've brought it up in the past that why aren't those cell phones listed in the directory when you go to try to contact somebody, a department head? You'll get the phone number for that department head, and oftentimes it's even hard to find an email address, although if you know how the city email works and you know their name, you can figure that out. But if they're going to have a cell phone, it seems like the people that are paying for that ought to be able to get a hold of them if it's a business cell phone.
If it's a business cell phone.
Right. When I worked for the government, we had them. It was listed in our directory. You know, you had the number for the office and the individual cell phone. And I know that those phones are used for personal use also. I know that. And now, again, it's not a big amount of money, but you add all those cell phones up, and I don't know how many there are. It'd be interesting to find out someday, and how much the city has to pay for those, and if there's any limit on, you know, the time and the texting and all that, if it's going over.
I think
That's
that,
one aspect of tightening the belt, you know.
That's something to look at. I know personally, Al and Robert, that when I need to reach one of them, I just call the number that is listed on their business cards, and it's not. I don't think it's a cell phone. I think it's
it's their office.
the office
number.
phone, and they call me back. So I don't use their cell phone. So
But you most of the time get a recording.
I get a recording. I leave a message. There's been times I've called them and they've picked up as well, but they call me right back.
Well, sure.
Yeah, I think this is
If you're Joe Sixpack, though.
another case of there's a couple of ways to look at it. I'm sure the way they are looking at it is this is for other members of the staff's convenience so that they can get a hold of somebody when they need to. And so it's not a, quote, published number because they don't want to be bothered by the public calling them. And I understand.
I know how I can get the number, though.
But I understand that viewpoint.
Get a hold
I
of
only
it.
got 10 seconds here now. Now I've totally blown it, and we're going to have to go to break. And we'll come back after break, and we'll continue this discussion. And welcome back to another segment of Ridgecrest Talk here on KZGN-TV. I'm Robert Eierman along with Al Huey and our special guest, Councilman Eddie Thomas. And we were talking about unpublished cell phone numbers by the managers of different groups.
It's not always managers that have the cell phone.
City employees. How about we just leave
Okay,
it at that?
that's good.
And I was saying that I think they view it as their convenience, Dennis Spears' convenience, the clerk's convenience, other department heads' convenience of getting hold of their fellow managers in an emergency or in a situation that they really need to get a hold of them. And I would purport that that's a reasonably valid viewpoint. However, there's a corollary to that, and that's that we, the citizens, all pay for it. So maybe they should think about it being our convenience.
Right.
I don't know which is the right or more viewpoint, or what the one that should take precedence. But if they have a paid for cell phone, then I tend to agree with you, Al, that those should be published, and we, the public, should be able to call them on those cell phones. And then it'll be up to them to say, well, okay, I'll get back to you, and unless it's an emergency, please don't use this number, use my office number. But that's up to them to sort out.
But I know how we get those numbers, those telephone numbers for their cell phones.
Okay?
I just give Donald a call, and
Oh, Donald Trump. Next president.
he's
Oh
giving
my
out
God.
cell phone numbers all the time. So
Yeah, right.
Yes, he
okay.
is. Hopefully he doesn't give out mine, too.
Well, let me see. I think I got him listening here. I'll tell him not to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But so the city had to make some hard cuts.
Yes, sir.
Getting back, and I'm not picking on you, Chief, but the police department was one of them. It was going to be hit pretty hard. It was talked about they could drop 4 officers, go from 32 down to 28. And the council decided not to do that, but rather borrow the money from
Wow.
Measure L to cover that deficit. It was a slip of the tongue, I'm sorry.
It happens.
To cover that $300,000 shortfall. So $300,000 for the streets, not there this year. But the council said, you got to find a way to make that up. Somewhere else, you got to pay that back, so it goes back into Measure L, which was, I give them kudos for that one.
That is correct.
So was the police department hit as hard as any of the others then? If they got, and I heard there was some other bond money or something, $700 or $70-some thousand that they were going to be getting to also help with the shortfall for the police department. So really, the police department didn't go through any kind of budget cut, did they?
Well, they were going to, but it was involving our safety as well, and it was also involving people potentially losing their jobs. So, and you both know that was a very hard decision.
Oh yeah.
For council, because we didn't want to jeopardize our safety, nor did we want to see people unemployed. and because of Measure L didn't use all of the money that they, or they got more money, extra money in. So it gave us an opportunity to put that there, but to make sure that the first thing they do when they do make up that money is to put it back into Measure L, because we're going to need Measure L or Measure M or whatever it is the next go around.
You only have it for what, another 2 years?
I don't remember.
I think it's 17.
12 to 17. Yeah, I think it's 17. June of 17,
Yes.
I believe.
And that, both of you guys, when I was on Measure L, that was one of the major things that we were looking at in reference to making sure that the past council didn't go into any of those funds and do anything with it. So to make that decision coming from Measure L was really, really tough, because we knew the battles that we had fought before to get where we're at now. And then it appears like here we're going back playing musical chairs with funds. So.
Yeah, I completely understand how.
And if we were to do it, Robert and I have talked about it. If we were to go out and do a man on the street interview, and ask people, when you voted for Measure L, was it your understanding that the majority of that money was going to go for streets, or most of it was going to go for police? I think 85% of the people would say, "Oh no, I thought it was all going to go, or the majority was going to go for streets."
I remember that, but I thought because of the police department did most of the street pounding, that they also informed that a percentage was going to the police and a percentage was going towards the improvement of our streets. I don't know if they
But the
told them.
public presentations, not talking about the police going door to door, it was always being impressed upon the people that, oh, now we'll be able to get our streets fixed. And the city has done a great job this last year doing that. Okay,
We've been pounding them pretty hard.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that what Al's saying is that nobody did anything wrong here. There's nobody at fault. I'm just saying that in general, I think that the public's perception, maybe it wasn't a correct perception, but their perception was that, yeah, this money's going for streets. And they, some of them I've talked with, didn't even understand that there was and public safety. But so now all I'm saying is that when 17 rolls around, it's going to be a more difficult sell. And that's not saying that it's not a good thing to do. I'm just saying that people are now more informed, and the problem with public safety is
You never have enough.
there's never enough.
I agree with you.
If you have 32 officers, well, certainly 42 would be better. And if you have 42, then 60 would be better. I mean, because you are talking public safety here, and we don't want to impinge upon that. So it's impossible to argue against. It's like arguing against motherhood and apple pie. And guess what? We're up against another break, right? We have one more segment? This is it?
What?
Oh my goodness, we're out of time again.
I didn't get a chance to tell you how
Wow.
nice I am and
Yeah, no,
good guy I am.
and we know that you are. So you'll have to come back and join
I
us
would
another
love
Thanks for
time.
being with us.
Thank
We
you for giving me
appreciate it.
time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Join us next week, folks, right here on Ridgecrest Talk, KZGN-TV, your only local TV station. Good night and God bless.